Let's talk about how to fabricate an inner flexible liner when utilizing one of our airlocks or easy-off locks. This video will include both the drop-in version of these locks as well as our standard fabrication. We want to ensure that we're choosing how we do our flexible inner based on what liner style we're using. So if we have a seal-in liner, we really want to pay attention to where we are sealing. So when I talk about sealing, each of our locks have either a groove for our non-drop-in, our standard air locks or easy-off locks, or we have a gasket here where our seal is created. So when I talk about a seal and sealing to our lock, when we have a regular airlock, we're talking about this groove. When we have a drop-in airlock, we're talking about one that's going to have a blue band located on it. Let's first start by looking at our drop-in airlock and how to seal against it. With our drop-ins, we also have two ways to seal against this gasket. So we can either utilize our inner flexible to seal against the gasket or our frame. If we're using our inner flexible is still removable, but will require a little bit of extra steps. When we do this fabrication, we'll have our plaster model, and then we're going to have our dummy placed on that. You're going to pull whatever plastic you prefer, and then before you do your lamination, you are going to cut off the excess so that you can do your lamination over the top. What this will allow is for your inner flexible to be sealed against your lock. So essentially, this is how it would look like from the inside. You can see here with our drop-in airlock, we have compression on this band from our inner flexible being pulled directly over it. I could still remove this inner flexible with a patient if needed, but I do have a slit placed here right underneath our lock button so that I am able to slide this in and out. It does help a little bit if you use a little bit of rubbing alcohol spray to mist it. It'll help it glide in and out a little bit more, or you can use a little bit of lubricant on the gasket itself to help with that sliding process. Now with this setup, we have the gasket sealing to our inner flexible socket. So if you have an individual who's using a seal-in option on their liner as well as a locking mechanism, you will want to do this technique. This is going to ensure the most airtight possible. We also recommend using some type of set screw or rivet to ensure that the inner flexible doesn't move as much as possible in relation to the frame. In order to easily install this, you could remove your push button and then drop it into the socket and then put your push button back in that way. That's going to be one of the easiest ways to do it. Just ensure that you have this completely level when you put your distal plate on, such as your pyramids. The other way to fabricate an inner flexible with a drop-in lock and have your inner flexible more free-floating is that after pulling your inner flexible material, you are going to cut off any of the material that surrounded your dummy, right? So you're going to be able to remove all of this, and it's going to be more of an open, flat bottom. This will then drop into the top of your socket, and you would install the lock the same way as you normally do. Now, this is more recommended for if you want to have an inner flexible that's very easy to remove. But then at this point, your lamination will be your seal against the drop-in airlock, against that blue band. So when you look down into your socket, you want to make sure that you have nice, good compression over this. This is indicated if we have a standard pin liner because we could potentially get some air between the inner flexible and frame. So if you are looking for the most airtight possible option, you're going to want to have the inner flexible cover over your gasket. Otherwise, if you want it to be more of a removable, then you can have your lamination go around your gasket here. You want to ensure that you get really good vacuum when you're doing your inner flexible pulls and your lamination. If you don't get excellent vacuum around this, you will have an air noise or potentially more air coming through. One of the ways that we recommend troubleshooting if potentially you haven't threaded it on properly or just trying to check your system is doing a water test. So feel free to put water into the socket and see if water comes out anywhere. There should be no air leakage through the socket in any area. So that's one way that you can do a test to ensure that you have the most optimal seal around your gasket and it's the most airtight socket possible. Now, when we are using one of our standard air locks or easy-off locks that are not the drop-in style, you should be able to see the post sticking out of the bottom, right? So that's an indicator that we're using this lock. We can do the same two options, either have our inner flexible be more removable or have it more in place and seal against it. So again, our two options are to seal to our inner flexible or to seal to our lamination. Let's first talk about sealing to our inner flexible. When you go to do your fabrication, you are going to pull your inner flexible material. You're then going to want to remove the excess so that you can have a strong bond, but you want to ensure that you leave your inner flexible pulled into the groove here. So you only want to allow about an 1/8 inch overlap. Anything past that will be removed so that it then can be bonded to your attachment plate, right? So again, we are connecting our inner flexible to our groove here for our seal, right? And so we are sealing here and removing that excess material and then being able to use our Coyote quick glue and gluing it to our connector plates for lamination. So that is how we seal an inner flexible to this point. Now, when you do that, that inner flexible now is not removable, okay? Because you have pulled that material into this groove. So when you are chiseling out your plaster and you're doing your trim lines, you'll need to be very mindful that that inner flexible is then locked into this lock and it's not removable. You want to make sure that you also, again, have gotten a really great vacuum seal around that. So if there's a risk that maybe potentially you haven't, or you're trying to check and see if you have any airflow, you can always use a little bit of silicone adhesive just around that face, right? Just a tiny little beaded amount, and wipe out the excess to ensure that you do have a really great seal in there. So again, that is having an inner flexible that seals to your lock. Okay? If you are sealing to your socket wall, you will still pull your material, your inner flexible material, but then you are going to cut your inner flexible to where your lock can easily come in and out, right? So with this has been trimmed completely so that we have no contact really of our inner flexible with our lock. So our inner flexible at this point can easily be removed in and out for the patient. It's a really great benefit for when you need to make adjustments to it. However, there is a chance that a tiny bit of air could get in between your inner flexible and frame and potentially cause an air noise. Unlikely, but it is more likely to happen if your patient has a loose fit. So if your patient's not keeping up with their proper sock apply, then they may experience a little bit more air sound happening. So again, when we do this step, we are going to pull our plastic and then remove any of the inner flexible material that's touching our lock. And then at this point, we are able to have an inner flexible that pulls in and out really easily out of our socket for adjustments and modifications. This is the standard way that Coyote does it whenever you send one of your jobs to us for your fabrication, and this is the way that you will see most of our manuals written recommending this step. For even more detailed steps on lamination tips, tricks, and ensuring that your lamination is successful, please visit our coyote.us page and look under our fabrication and instructional information that will provide you with the most up-to-date details that can ensure you have an outstanding finished project. Additionally, our YouTube page has several more videos that you can take a look at exactly how each step is done. When in doubt, give us a call. We're here to help explain any step of the process to you and ensure that you have great outcomes for years to come. Thanks so much.